This month, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is averaging 38 points a game on 50-40-90 splits, while the Thunder have gone 7-1 and are now tied for first in the NBA. Yet, I still feel like a lot of people don't know what we're witnessing. This is one of the most complete, dynamic, and efficient scorers in NBA history who has a counter for quite literally everything defenses throw his way. Something that I've always felt was overlooked with Shai is how fast he plays. Instead of walking the ball up the court and waiting for the offense to settle before attacking, he's in constant go mode, which has resulted in some of the best transition scoring seasons of the decade. This year, he's third in the NBA at just under 7 points a game in transition, and he's getting to those points in a wide variety of ways. Due to a combination of speed, agility, and ball handling, he's nearly impossible to stay in front of once he builds up a head of steam. Then in the rare event that a defender is able to cut off his initial driving lane, he'll either drop the shoulder and go right through them on his way to the rim, or he'll counter by going into his bag with some crafty moves, such as a spin in the opposite direction as he gathers for a finish. Naturally, this leads to defenders overplaying the paint as he gets downhill, which then gives him access to short pull-up jumpers, and if they only prioritize the drive by sagging way off of the ball, that's when he'll step back to the three-point line. Adding more off-the-dribble three-point shooting has been one of the biggest differences for Shai this year. On the season, he's attempting nearly 5 pull-up threes a game and hitting 34.8% of them, which isn't some absurd mark, but is more than enough to keep the defense honest. Actually though, I think this undersells the caliber of shooter he is right now because of a slow start to the season. As he's gotten more comfortable and confident getting to these shots within the flow of the offense, the percentages have seen a steady increase, and if we only look at the calendar year of 2025, since January 1st, he's attempted 139 pull-up threes and made 38%. So we're talking about a legitimate weapon in his arsenal. And that adds another layer to his game in transition. Defenders already have to worry about the drive, and now that he's threatening the pull-up three with a hesitation, he's able to create even more lanes to attack. So by playing fast against an unset defense, he can pretty much do whatever he wants. Take away the three and he's driving, take away the drive and he's pulling up for a mid-range jumper. And the speed with which he plays also makes him immune to double teams. Some defenses will try to get the ball out of his hands by trapping as soon as he crosses half court, to which he counters by getting into his attack before the double reaches him. Take this play for example. As he crosses half court, he slows things down to attack LeVert one-on-one. But at the exact moment Dean Wade starts to run towards him with a double, he instantly drives baseline where he finds some space to stop on a dime for a jumper. Here's another example. Trendon Watford is getting ready to double from Shai's left, and when he recognizes that, he counters by immediately attacking right, then sheds a third defender with some sharp footwork. Sometimes the defense is able to force him into the double, like on this one his defender angles his body to take away the baseline while a second defender comes from the middle, leaving Shai with nowhere to go except in between them. But when you have one of the tightest handles we've ever seen and can navigate through even the smallest spaces on the court, there really isn't much the defense can do. I want to take a second to focus on the handle. Shai's very lengthy, yet he has the ball on a string like a small guard, which means that he's able to get wherever he wants to go. And not only can he get wherever he wants to go, he can get there without the risk of turning the ball over, which is one of the most overlooked but valuable skills a lead creator can possess. If we take a look at the correlation between how often a player has the ball and how often they turn it over, you'll notice that Shai's near the top of the league in time of possession, while landing well below the typical mark for turnovers at just 2.5 a game. And because OKC runs so much of their offense through him, while he takes such good care of the ball, that impact is reflected at the team level, with the Thunder averaging the least amount of turnovers of any team. Shai's elite handle is also the foundation for his half-court scoring game. He's got maybe the best change of pace in the NBA, so it's all about weaponizing that sudden burst with the right sets of moves. His go-to is a simple between the legs dribble as he gets low to the ground. If his defender doesn't close his hips, he's going from 0 to 100 on his way to the rim. You'll often see him hesitate while going between his legs, which creates a sort of delay effect. And what he's doing is reading his defender in real time, then reacting instantly to counter whatever position they're in. Like on this play, when he goes between his legs, his defender slides over to cut that off, so instead of starting his drive, he puts it back between his legs while attacking the opposite direction, leaving him with a path to the cup. These counters are made possible by his ability to start and stop. On this one, he starts a drive left, only to slam the brakes and spin back to his right, all while buckling Josh Hart's legs. Remember what I said earlier about him adding the pull-up 3? Well, that really shows up on these perimeter isolations, because if he hesitates to threaten a drive and his defender drops back, he'll use that space to make them pay, but he can just as easily hesitate to freeze his defender before throwing it between his legs as he bursts down the middle of the paint. When it comes to utilizing the 3, his go-to move is this pound dribble with the left as he steps back for a little bit of separation, and that becomes so much tougher to defend when you realize that he can go to the pound dribble only to hesitate and bait his defender into jumping out before starting an actual drive. Or sometimes he'll start a drive to get that defender leaning towards the paint, only to slam the brakes and step back out to the three-point line with space to shoot. And if you think that's tough to defend, wait until you see him start a drive, pull back out, only to start a second drive in the opposite direction as he knifes his way into a layup. Before this season, Shai was already the toughest player in the league to stay in front of. Now, with the added threat from outside, this part of his game has reached a completely different level. If we look at how every player in the league has performed as a scorer out of drives this season, not only is he a complete outlier in terms of volume, he's a complete outlier in terms of efficiency. Nobody comes remotely close to approaching him as a downhill scoring threat. And we can even take this graph back to 2014 when they first started tracking drives. Now there are a few guys who rival Shai's production. Himself in 2023, himself in 2024, and also a season of Luka, so shout out to Luka. Actually, there's something Shai does as a driver that Luka has also completely mastered. What I'm talking about is the fact that once that initial advantage is created, both of these guys masterfully use their body to prevent any chance of recovery. Shai has an incredibly lengthy frame, so if he gets even half a step around his defender, he'll use exaggerated strides to get all the way to the rim. But another thing you'll see him do is use his body as a shield. After getting around his defender, instead of taking a straight path to the basket, he leans back into his defender with his inside shoulder to throw off his momentum, which takes him out of the play entirely. And this means that the only way to alter his attempts at the rim is to send a help defender from somewhere else. Only he's got all of the tools to counter those looks as well. I mentioned his lengthy frame. He's also skinny, and he'll use that to his advantage to sneak through tiny gaps in the defense while gathering the ball to finish. And that length gives him access to all sorts of unique release angles. This time a defender's glued to his right shoulder, so he fully extends his left for a soft touch finger roll. And on this one, it's the inverse, with a rim protector stuck on his left shoulder, so he extends the right and scoops it across his body. Not only does his length give him access to these angles, thanks to some remarkable touch, he's comfortable going to every single one of them. If he gets around his defender and a rim protector is deep in the paint, he can go to a high arcing floater over the top, or reminiscent of Steph Curry, he can scoop it off the floor for a high arcing finger roll. That instant reaction time I talked about really stands out when it's time to find finishing angles. On this one, there's a defender on his left hip and a rim protector coming from his right, so he turns his body while extending his arm to sneak the ball through. This time there's no defender on his hip, but 2 rim protectors coming from either side, and he gathers the ball close to brace for contact before fully extending the left, and just look at the angle he gets to before releasing. That's some ridiculous craft. The craft around the rim when paired with the touch does show up in the numbers. On the season, he's attempting about 6 layups a game and making over 63% of them. Of the 17 players attempting more than 5 a game, the only ones who have been more efficient are Jokic, Jakob Poeltl, Sabonis, and LeBron. Or in simpler terms, non-guards. Something that separates Shai from most guards, though, is his ability to generate easy shots for himself at the rim. I talked about all of the different angles he can go to and how he's capable of scoring through the trees, but he still finds himself with a decent amount of open looks, and that's because his superpower as an athlete is his ability to slam the brakes, which throws off the timing of defenders and creates separation. We've seen players with the ability to stop on a dime, but we've never seen it quite to this degree. Not only can he go from 0 to 100, he can do the inverse, which is often what leads to those big openings. Another way he creates high quality shots for himself at the rim is by initiating contact with the use of shoulder bumps. I think because of that skinny and lengthy frame, a lot of people overlook his power. He's really strong, and when you pair that strength with the ability to start and stop, and those long strides, you're left with a guy who consistently gets all the way to the rim. As of right now, he's attempting about 6 shots at the rim every 75 possessions and finishing an impressive 72% of them, which not only makes him the best interior scoring guard in the league, it makes him one of the most imposing interior scorers regardless of position. And it's that constant downhill presence that helps him earn trips to the free throw line. As a result of consistently getting defenders off balance and leaning into them to create contact, anytime they try to beat him to the punch by creating contact first, he'll sell the foul. Because no defender has quick enough feet to consistently stay in front of him legally, they'll often use their hands to grab or hold, and as soon as Shai feels that contact, he's selling it for the call. And of course, anytime a defender tries to reach or just gets a hand stuck in the cookie jar, he'll gather up through the arm, which is an automatic whistle. Say what you want about how fun it is to watch this part of his game, or even the ethics behind it, there's no denying that almost every call Shai gets is an actual foul though. He may sell the contact, but that's just smart basketball, and it makes him so much tougher to defend. He's currently attempting 9.5 free throws every 75 possessions, good for second in the NBA, and he's converting on an absurd 90% of them. I can't stress enough how valuable it is to get to the line that many times and make 90% of your free throws. That's such a massive boost to his and the team's efficiency. The ability to shoot 90% from the line is a pretty good indicator of his touch as a mid-range shooter. And when you pair great touch as a shooter with the driving threat, with the deceleration, with the strength, it all makes him one of the best mid-range scorers we've ever seen. Like I said, it's nearly impossible to stay in front of him. Well, anytime a defender is able to cut him off, he'll throw one of those shoulder bumps while slamming the brakes to pull up for a jumper. And it doesn't matter how big the defender is. This time it's a 7-foot Walker Kessler, and he's still getting bumped off the spot. I don't really know how refs draw the line between what's an offensive foul and what isn't, but some of these bumps from Shai would definitely be considered illegal if he wasn't so quick to pull the hand back before they can see that it's extended. So he's able to get away with some really forceful push-offs, which when paired with the best breaks in the game, helps him create so much separation it's almost mind-bending. And in the rare event that he goes to one of these bumps while stopping and either finds himself off balance or without space to rise up, he'll regather from the pivot and turn into a new angle. It's the ability to make off-balance shots that really pulls this skill set together. This one starts with a drive and a shoulder bump, but a rim protector's coming from his right, so he drifts back to his left for a fadeaway. And I should also mention that in addition to the contact or change of speed helping him create space, he can also use that elite handle. Just like on the three-point line, defenders have to constantly be thinking about the drive, and there's no shortage of moves he can go to as a setup for these jumpers. When it all works together, it looks like this: a pound dribble step back to threaten the three, a between the legs dribble to threaten the drive, only to immediately stop and send Sexton tumbling to the paint with all of the space in the world. He's taking the second most mid-range shots of any player in the league with about 11 attempts every 75 possessions, and he's converting on about 51% of those shots. So we're talking about mid-range scoring that rivals the likes of a peak Kevin Durant. And I can't stress enough how the ability to access 50% shots on demand is the ultimate counter to any type of defense. Because he's such a big threat to drive, defenses will send all sorts of help, to which he can always fall back on that jumper. Some will load up on the drive early by sending a rim protector to the strong side of the floor, and all he has to do is create separation from his individual defender. Some will completely pack the paint or even go to a zone to make sure that their best shot blocker is parked in the middle, but all Shai has to do is go over the top. Look at how the Raptors zone him up on this one. They go to a box and one in hopes of taking away the drive, only for him to find space near the wing for a midi. The thing about these zone looks is they take away his ability to create straight line drives. But Shai doesn't actually need to get downhill to create these openings. He has a 360-degree attack radius, and what I mean by that is when he can't go forward, he'll either go back or attack space to his left and right. He's an absolute master of navigating space. Here's one where he gets around his defender, but a big is parked in the middle with nobody protecting the elbow, so instead of driving in a straight line, he cuts back into a drive right where he finds an opening for a jumper. With a live dribble, there's literally nothing Shai can't do. He's a top tier driver, he's a top tier finisher, he's a top tier space creator, he's a top tier mid-range shooter. He gets to the line and never misses. He handles the ball all game and never turns it over. He's added a consistent three ball, and he's just as effective in transition as he is in the half court. There are still a few wrinkles to his game I haven't talked about though, such as his ability to play from a standstill. He's got a really nice face-up game that they'll go to against certain defensive looks, where he's got the entire package of drives, jab steps, and jumpers. And he's also got a really nice back to the basket game that he'll go to whenever he's matched up with a smaller guard. More times than not, he's looking to get to this signature turnaround jumper over his left shoulder, and it's almost laughable how much ground he's able to cover with just this one move, while the shot making takes care of the rest. When playing from the right side of the floor, he pairs that threat of fading over his left with the right shoulder bump midi he loves so much, and when playing from the left side of the floor, he's even capable of spinning over his right shoulder, not just for turnaround jumpers, but to create lanes to attack baseline, and we're back to the driving. Shai's post-ups are few and far between because they're either used as a counter or for taking advantage of certain matchups. But whenever he does turn his back to the basket, he's very efficient, generating 1.05 points per possession, which lands him in the 67th percentile among all players. That's nothing in comparison to when he's facing the basket though. On those isolations, he's second in the NBA at nearly 8 points a game, while generating an incredibly efficient 1.09 points per possession, which is good for the 88th percentile. The combination of live dribble, standstill, and back to the basket isolations makes him one of the most complete one-on-one scorers in NBA history. Then the cherry on top is that he's also evolved into maybe the league's best pick and roll scorer. It starts with the way he uses his handle to manipulate screens so that he's always attacking open space. If the point of attack defender tries to overplay the side of the screen, he'll reject it and attack downhill in the opposite direction, which means that the defender is forced to play the action straight up, to which he'll take a tight angle around the screen, forcing contact and putting him in a position to attack the big. So defending Shai in the pick and roll is all about the covers that the big is in, and he's one of those guys who has counters for every look. Against a deep drop, he's not just a threat to get to the mid-range, but is now hunting for that pull-up three. But when he has that much space to work with, he's usually looking to attack. Something he really likes to do is snake the screen going from right to left so that he can navigate across the paint and find those short jumpers. I wouldn't be surprised if he learned this from Chris Paul, who's the absolute master. I talked about how great Shai is at navigating space, and that really stands out on these attacks. Many great mid-range scorers have spots on the floor that they like to hunt for, but Shai is one of the few whose spot is the entire court. So when he starts attacking laterally, he might get all the way to the baseline before he decides to rise up. And if the space is a bit tighter, that's when you'll see him slow things down, put his defender in jail, then patiently operate in between as he hunts for a little opening. A lot of defenses will try to take away that space to turn the corner by bringing their big up closer to the level of the screen in a high drop. But against Shai, that just makes them all the more vulnerable. Because his handle allows him to maneuver through small gaps, he's still able to turn the corner, and now he's able to create clean driving lanes with bigs trying to recover. As a result, he very commonly catches these bigs off balance or leaning towards the paint, to which he'll of course throw one of those bumps as he stops for a jumper. The only way to completely take away that space is to send two to the ball either in a hedge or a trap, but Shai's downhill presence doesn't stop there. Just like with the double teams from earlier, the speed with which he attacks and the control of the ball allows him to navigate through these coverages and knife his way to the paint. Yet, the defense can never speed him up if he doesn't want to play fast. Even while drawing two to the ball, he remains every bit as methodical and will take his time hunting for those openings. If we take a look at how every player has fared in the pick and roll this season, you'll notice that Shai has been the second highest volume scorer while being the most efficient of any player who's averaging at least 3 points. So we're talking about a guy who's probably both the best isolation and pick and roll scorer in the NBA. How many guys ever can you say that about? James Harden? LeBron James? It's a short list. And Shai's unique in the sense that he seems immune to literally every single tactic, coverage, or individual defender thrown his way. He'll torch single coverage, he'll torch double teams. Simply put, this guy's about as flawless of an on-ball scorer you'll find in NBA history. The only big advantage I'd say some guys like Michael Jordan or Kevin Durant have over him is a more versatile scoring arsenal away from the ball. But as Shai's improved his three, and the Thunder have used Hartenstein more and more as a passing hub in the middle of the floor, we're starting to see that aspect of his game grow as well. For a too long, didn't read version, what we're witnessing with Shai this season is one of the most complete, one of the most dynamic, and one of the best scorers the sport of basketball has ever seen. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Shai. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.